Five, four, three, two, one. Hi, I'm Craig McCormick. I'm the editor at large for Commercial Integrator, joined today by Terry Friesenborg. He's the Chief Global Officer for AVIXA. Hey, Terry, how you doing today?
I'm great, Craig. Great. Really nice to have that. Okay, so I screwed it up right off the beginning. Okay, get that out of the way. You want to try that again?
Sure. Hi, I'm Craig McCormick. I'm editor at large for Commercial Integrator, joined today by Terry Friesenborg. He's the Chief Global Officer for AVIXA. Hey, Terry, how you doing today?
I'm great, Craig. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem. I'm glad to have you here. I know we're on a bit of borrowed time because I understand that you're going to be stepping away from AVIXA here at the end of the year. Why don't you tell us a little bit about
I'm losing
when?
audio,
Oh, did I lose you?
so I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
It's
Yeah, yeah. I can now hear the clicking on your mic.
going here.
Uh-oh.
How's that?
I hear you.
Good. I hear you now too.
All
So
right.
it's been a long day of video conferencing here. So
Oh yeah, busy day.
yeah. So, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Let's try it again.
Nope. No problem. So I understand that you'll be stepping away from your role as Chief Global Officer at the end of the year. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what it went into that decision, and how long it took you to get to that point, and why you decided the end of the year was the right time for you to retire.
Well, a lot of things went into the decision, as you might expect, but we have been on a 3-year strategic plan that started coincidentally 3 years ago. And as I was looking at how I was planning to wind up my career, it was important to me that I completed that initiative, having worked with the board and senior management in creating that strategic plan. I wanted to see it through. So I actually talked to Dave Labuscus, right after we initiated that, and felt that was a good time for me in terms of what I wanted to do after work and my family, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, the time was right, and it's a good opportunity, and I feel we've got a great person in Sarah Joyce coming in to take my place. So it was a good time, very comfortable with the decision at this point.
Okay, and I understand that you've been in the industry for more than 3 decades. How did you kind of get to the point where you are at this point as the AVIXA Chief Global Officer? How did you get started in AV, and how did you kind of trace up to this point?
I majored in film in college long ago. I was a commercial photographer, got involved in theater, both film and live theater. And if you think about it, back at that time, it was a silver-based industry in terms of film and multi-image and all those sorts of things. So it really, my love sort of came together and coalesced around AV. It's something that I had been involved with my whole life. I remember my dad long ago had one of the first slide cameras and slide projectors, and actually had an ability to record a record, cut a disc, if you will. And he would stick me in a homemade rear projection cabinet, and every time I heard the ding on the record, I was the slide changer. So I guess I was sort of born into it, and have really enjoyed it ever since. It was my great fortune to start working with Twyman Films 40 years ago now. And both Ellen Twyman Sr. and Jr. are past presidents of the association. Back then it was called NAVA, the National Audiovisual Association. So I was bundled off to training from NAVA early on in my career, got involved with the association, sort of went through the PETC committee and teaching and all those kinds of things, and ended up on the board and finally going through the president role in the association. So it was just a natural move to move from the industry that I loved in terms of a practitioner, both in the live event side and in the integration side, and then ultimately into the association, and try to take those things that I had learned and share them back, and work to move the industry forward.
Okay. Do you mind telling us how old you are?
Not at all. I'm 66 until I get to Infocom, and then I'll be 67. But 66 for now.
Okay. So that's a subtle hint to everyone who's going to be at Infocom to make sure they have a birthday cake ready for you, right?
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
All good.
All right. And for those who don't know what a chief global officer does for AVIXA, why don't you tell us kind of the day-to-day or month-to-month or year-to-year kind of responsibilities of that position?
In the most simplistic terms, it's running all of our operations outside of the US and Canada. We do lots of things in that environment. We have 11 trade shows outside of the US now. That's been part of my development from a career perspective since I was back on an officer role when we launched our first show in '95 in Singapore. That's grown, and that certainly takes a lot of my thought time, although not a lot of my operational time, because we have great teams who run those. ISE was one of our shows in Infocom China and Latin America and throughout the world. So that's part of my concern, but equally important to me and to the association are all of our membership activities outside of the US as well. We have people stationed on every continent besides Africa and Antarctica, which I don't think we'll probably ever get to. And we have about 35% of our membership now outside the US. So we do all the things that the US folks know us for: the training, the certification, the standards, the market intelligence, the trade shows, of course, and networking events and opportunities for members to get together. That's what we do, and that's what I get to work with a fantastic team to try to accomplish globally.
Okay, and what are some of the challenges and obstacles that maybe you run into in some of the different continents that maybe you wouldn't encounter in North America, as a result of, putting together a show or, putting together a member meeting or something like that?
Sure. Well, all cultures are different, so each culture has different expectations out of those sorts of events. We've been very careful throughout the years not to be an expat kind of culture where we send people out of the US and say, go recreate Infocom US in India. I think that's a great way to fail. I think you have to get local people. I think you have to share with them sort of the brand story, if you will, of what we do as AVIXA and what Infocom, the show brand, means. But then they have to morph that into something that works where they are. And that, I think, is key to whatever success we've had, is that when you walk into a trade show or a member meeting or a training class around the world, you would know that it was ours, but you would definitely see differences. And more than cosmetic ones. And yeah, you can have a lion dance in China, and you can have a different sort of music in Latin America. But the point is, people need to come in and say, this is my show, or come in and say, this is the training for me here, or this is the market intelligence I'm getting that's relevant to my situation. And if you work hard at that, and believe me, you fail a lot doing that, but you learn from those failures, and you respect the fact that we're not trying to export an American product. We're trying to create a global community.
Okay, and how do you educate yourself or learn about the different cultures and create the shows and the experiences that the different markets around the world are looking for and kind of take on as their own?
Well, I guess early on, you did your homework, read a lot, tried to understand those things through that medium. But really, when it gets right down to it, you try to hire the best people you can in those locations, and you walk in and you say, I know nothing about this, so tell me about it. And one of the wonderful things about my job, and there are many, but when you go to these places, you're not a tourist. Hopefully you're a traveler, and even more hopefully you are someone who finds business partners and friends in those areas. And people are for the most part very kind around the world, and if you're open about it and you come in and try to leave your ego parked at the boarding gate when you get on the plane, they'll be happy to share with you. They'll be honest with you. They'll tell you when you're going down a bad path and you should stop. They'll show you the way to a better opportunity, and that's what I've been trying to accomplish for the last 20 years.
Okay. Do you have an example of a particular success story in one of these markets? And I know all of them are probably successes because they've continued to grow. But is there one that you're particularly proud that you were able to crack into a particular market and have it be successful?
Well, let me share two of them with you on the trade show side. The first one is ISE. ISE has grown to be the largest pro AV show in the world. We did a little over 80,000 attendees in Amsterdam last February. And I recall the first show very vividly. We were in Geneva. It was really cold, and we had something like 3,200 people. And at that point, you're looking at a show that's titled Integrated Systems Europe, and you're realizing that you're certainly not delivering on that promise in terms of the attendee quantity, although the quality was okay. And now it's grown over the last 16 years into what it is. And I just got back last week from our launch of Infocom Southeast Asia, which is our return to where we really started. We started in Singapore, but this time we're in Bangkok. And we so exceeded my expectation. I'm not sure if we exceeded the Infocom Asia team's expectations, but had over 7,000 people and over 1,600 people in our education summit program. What you saw there was the culmination of a whole lot of work. We did a what was it, 5 country, 6 city, 9-day tour promoting it back in March. But that was just my very small involvement. Richard Tan, who runs that for us, basically spent 8 months on the road in Southeast Asia doing that. And when you see that all come together, and you see the people come in, and you see the aisles are busy, but more importantly, people are having great conversations in the stands, talking about the products, but great conversations with each other, sharing experiences and talking about what they do for a living and why it's important to them and how they got there. That's very rewarding. So those are two show-related things. The things outside the show are much more difficult to sort of quantify and narrow down to a thing, because that's really just the experiences you have with people. I've had the opportunity over the years to watch many careers grow, and to feel that the association had something positive to do with that career growth. So those are the highlights.
Okay, and in terms of ISE in particular, obviously that's become, like you said, the biggest AV show in the world. Why do you think it's become that, and how does it feel to have played a part in helping to create that?
Well, it's owned by AVIXA and by CEDIA, so it brings sort of both of those worlds together, the pro side and the residential side, and certainly that helps give it a wide profile. It's located in a place now in Amsterdam, and in 21 to be Barcelona, that's extremely accessible. That has less barriers of entry for a global audience than the US show does at this point in time anyway. So I think that's helped. And I think the fact that it was satisfying a need. The US show's great, and I'm looking forward to being at it in just a couple of weeks. And we bring people from around the world there. Over 100 countries are represented at the US show. But it also sits in the largest AV market in the world. So it's not surprising that the people you find to talk to on the stands are very focused on the US market, because that's why they're there, and they're there for a commercial reason. Nobody thinks that the Netherlands is the biggest AV market on earth, right? So when you come to that show, the expectation and the people who are staffing the stand are ready to deal with a global audience, because that's where their focus is. So we had people from over 180 countries at ISE in February. So I think it was the right place, the right time, and a lot of hard work. Mike Blackman and his team do an amazing job with that show. So it's a culmination of a lot of factors.
Okay, and in terms of now, it's moving to Barcelona, like you said, in 2021. Was that a challenging decision, or tough to to move it to outside of like you said, outside of the Netherlands and into a much larger space, obviously going forward?
Yes, well, yes, it was an extremely challenging and difficult decision. It's really hard to make decisions when things are going well. When things aren't going well, it's really easy to make decisions because you have no choice. Unfortunately, as much as we love Amsterdam, and we dearly love Amsterdam, we grew up in Amsterdam with the show. We simply ran out of room. Uh, if for those of you who've been to Amsterdam, you know that we've built as many tents or whatever you'd like to call them, pavilions outside of the actual structure of the RAI, that we have parking lots to build on. And we have a waiting list of people who want to be on the show. We have a lot of demand by our existing exhibitors to want to grow their space in the show, and we just physically couldn't do it. So as we begin to go through that process of looking at possible venues, and there are many, there are some very safe choices just across the border in Germany that certainly could accommodate us. There are places in other parts of Europe. But we felt one of the things about our success is that Amsterdam was sort of on brand for us. It spoke to people who are creative, who are looking for opportunities to have experiences and to be part of the AV community. And when we looked around, we felt Barcelona answered that same need. Not to mention it's a little warmer in February than Amsterdam is. But I just got back 2 weeks ago. I just got back from an event that we had for our 100 major exhibitors, and we brought them all to Barcelona. And it was amazing at how much the community opened its arms to us. The mayor, the president of Catalonia, all of these people were there to welcome us and to make sure that the industry understood that they wanted us there. They do very large shows because they have a wonderful, large, very modern facility there. So we feel that we've made a good choice. We feel that our exhibitor community is behind us in that, and we're excited for 21. It almost made me not retire, but no, not really. So, it may be the first show I go to after retirement, though. It would be fun to see that.
I was actually going to ask you if you were going to be able to make it and kind of see the shift and the move to the new facility.
I'd love to. I got to tell you, it's not my plan to keep showing up and at all the shows. I mean, it's been a great ride in this industry and a tremendous ride with the association. But I'm looking forward to retirement, to getting back to doing some things I put on hold for 40 years or so, and to having the opportunity to spend time with my kids and my grandkids.
Okay. Did you ever think when ISE was first starting that you guys would run out of space in a building that holds 80,000 people, 80,000 attendees?
I got to tell you, that was our least of our concerns at the time. With the first show in Geneva, the biggest concern was having a second show somewhere. We knew it wasn't Geneva. Actually, we went to Amsterdam, then Brussels, and then back to Amsterdam where we stayed. And no, our first show in Amsterdam was in one hall. We're now in 16 halls. So, it's the growth. Well, you knew we would grow. Once we got past those first 2-3 years, you knew we were on a good path to grow. The size to which we have grown was not something we anticipated at the time.
Okay. You've obviously seen growth in the AV market around the world. Are there any markets that are particularly surprising in terms of their growth, and are there markets where there's still some good potential to continue growing?
Oh yeah, there are many markets where there's great potential to grow. Surprising, it's all a matter of where you are on the technology adoption curve, if you will. It's quite interesting to see how AV is positioned. If you look at Western Europe and the US, we have a very long tradition of using AV from way back when it was an opaque projector or 16 millimeter projector. You get into some new markets like the Middle East, for example, there is no long-term relationship with AV, and it's often viewed as a peripheral to IT. So you see its adoption differently in different places, but it's amazing how ubiquitous the AV product set has become globally at this point. I mean, obviously, when you get to nascent markets, there's an issue of how much funding there is to go into those sorts of things. But if you look at the election, not this last cycle, but the cycle before in India, there were 36 trucks out projecting a hologram where the candidate could address the marketplace. So, the biggest fallacy you can have is to say, well, that a country doesn't appear to be on the same development scale or in the same time frame as our country, and then you go there and very quickly you go, well, that was a totally biased and erroneous assumption, because the industry is everywhere, and it is involved in so many aspects of our lives, from helping us find the way to find the right plane in an airport, to advertising on the road, to having meetings, to you and I communicating like this. Um, it is certainly a global industry, and there are huge opportunities. I was so impressed with talking to the folks last week in Southeast Asia and hear about, we know certain markets there are big, like Singapore and Thailand, Bangkok, but hearing about the developments in Vietnam and in Cambodia and Laos, Myanmar, and talking to people who are doing business in those countries and how much scope there is for the growth of the industry. So I think it's, I couldn't imagine more exciting industry to be involved with.
Okay. I'm guessing that you spend a fair amount of of your time in airports and hotels as
Yes.
the chief global officer. How do you kind of deal with that, and what maybe percentage of your time is spent outside of the U.S. and away from home these days?
I spend about 200 days a year outside the U.S. Um, and and that can be tiring, just physically tiring, changing multiple time zones on a regular basis. Nobody gets truly used to that. And it's, as time has progressed, and certainly we've seen an increase in security in the airports. We've seen the process of getting on the plane become much longer than it was 20 years ago when I started. It's challenging. I always joke that some of my favorite time is on the plane, and my least favorite time is everything between, leaving the hotel and getting on the plane. So that's a challenge, but just things you go through to get the job done. All hotel rooms look a lot alike, no matter where you are in the world. And yes, you do wake up and sometimes and go, okay, exactly what country am I in? It's a really great plan on going through 6 cities in 9 days to take a picture of the room number before you leave the room so you can remember it when you go back. But it's interesting. You travel not only with my team, but with a lot of the manufacturers who do shows globally. It's like a little band of brothers and sisters who go around the world living this lifestyle that most people don't. And there's a certain camaraderie in that, and there's definitely an enjoyment in that. And while we work a lot and we work very hard, having the opportunity to be in 60 some odd countries and to be able to share cultures with the people who are there has been an extraordinary experience.
Okay. Do you have a favorite place to visit and travel to?
Well, it's like asking which child you love the most, right? I love Amsterdam. If I could talk my wife into leaving our grandchildren that are only 45 minutes away from our house, I'd live there. I think it's just a stunning city and tremendous people. I was in Bangkok, as I said last week, and I was reminded how much I love the Thai people, how generous they are and how compassionate they are, and simply how much they care about your experience being in their country. And I'll throw in one more, which is Buenos Aires. I love that town. I love the culture there. Many years ago, in 1997, I believe, when I was traveling as an officer of the association, I met a gentleman down there, Rodrigo Jesus Koch, who's now runs Latin America for us. And he took me out to see the tango. And the next morning at breakfast, he said, "Now that you've seen the tango, how do you feel?" And it really struck me that the experience isn't the sights and sounds, but the experience is how it all makes you feel. And I love Argentina. It makes me feel wonderful every time I have the opportunity to be there.
Okay. You have a little while longer left in your position. What do you have left to accomplish the last 6 months or so of your tenure with AVIXA?
Well, obviously we have my replacement on board in Sarah Joyce, and so I have an obligation to get her up to speed. But she's an extraordinarily bright and competent woman. I'm guessing that won't take 6 months. I do have another 6 trade shows to do in that period of time, and I look forward to seeing all my friends. I mean, I guess the only downside of the retirement piece is I have many friends, and they are all over the world. In reality, we will stay connected. Certainly, social media and all the other assets we have with today's technology set let you do that. But you're not going to see them 3 or 4 times a year like you do now. So there'll be a lot of goodbyes and a lot of thank yous. And besides working, because Dave, if you're listening, I'm going to keep working. I'm looking forward to that opportunity.
Okay. Do you have any estimate on how many miles you've racked up in the position?
Well, I'm a 2 million miler with United, and that would be flying on planes that say United on the side of them. I usually only do that on the way out of the country and the way back. So, I think in kayak right now it's got me at something like 4.5 million, but I didn't start that at the beginning of the journey. So, yeah, a lot of miles, awful lot of miles, awful lot of hotel room nights. But it's been worth it. I'm saying that because I'm home at the moment. You asked me that 2 days ago when I just got home, I might have given you a different answer, but yeah, it's been worth it.
And I know most people when they retire they like to travel. Is that what you're thinking when you're done, or are you just gonna stay at home for a while and hang out on the couch?
I'm going to try to avoid the couch because I could see that as bad. But no, I'm not going to travel. And I joked with my wife, I'm going to sleep the month of January. And then I'm going to wake up and reinvent myself. But I actually stole that quote from someone. I'd credit him if I remembered who. But no, in terms of the kind of travel I do now, no. Now, will we travel internationally? Oh yeah, we will, but not for a while. When I grew up and when my kids grew up, we spent a lot of time driving around the U.S. And I've missed that. I want to reattach myself to my community and my country because I've been away for a while. So it's a little bit homecoming, if you will, at least on a metaphysical, if not physical level. And yeah, kind of dial it back a bit. Like I said, do some things I haven't done in a long time. Spend more time with family, but by no means shut down. I'm excited about the things I get to go do now, and I'm looking forward to that actually.
Okay. And you mentioned your wife a couple of times. What's her name?
Her name's Dee Friesenborg. We've been married over 40 years, and we actually spent 17 years of that working together in the AV industry. She's done a lot of teaching for the association, and ran the live events portion of our company. So, and we survived that. We're still married. So yeah, she enjoys travel, and we've gotten the opportunity to travel a bit in terms of my job and her being able to come along on that. And I got 3 great kids and 4 great granddaughters. One more, I got a basketball team. So that's a lot of the kind of things I'm looking to enjoy more of. We stay very close, but the physical reality is you're gone 200 days a year. So you don't make every recital, and every spring concert, and I want to change that now.
Okay. Do you want to mention your children's names and
Oh, absolutely.
your grandchildren as well too?
You bet. Aaron, my son, and his lovely wife Jen. I live in Dayton. They live in Cincinnati, so that's a very easy connection. And there's Heather, Samantha, and Anna. They're 3 daughters. Those are people I can very easily get to see on a regular basis. My daughter Molly and her husband Nick are in the Washington D.C. area. And frankly, that I'm going to have to work at because our office is in Fairfax. So it's always a good extra incentive to go back to the office to see my daughter and her husband. And then my youngest daughter, Cody, and her husband, Gordon, and our littlest granddaughter, Maggie, who just turned 9 months on Monday. They're out in San Francisco. So we might fly to that one. That'd be a bit of a drive. But yeah, I'm looking forward to all of that and getting to share more time with them. They've been so supportive because when I started this job, all three were in high school. So I know that they that it changed their world and changed their lives because Dad wasn't just driving 10 minutes down the road to go to work every day. Occasionally he went away on an airplane, and they've been very supportive of that and very understanding of the needs that my job put on me and my time.
Okay, and I think at one point you alluded to the fact that you're gonna keep on working after retirement. Do you have something lined up already, or just
Oh no, I'm not going to keep working.
Okay.
I'm I'm been a drummer for most of my life, and besides, literally my drum set sits on the other side of my monitor, and for a lot of years I've walked by it every day, multiple times, going, "Hi, how are you? You still look good." Want to play it more. Doing some things to turn the basement of my house into a recording studio. As I mentioned, I was a photographer as my trade many years ago. So have traded the old film camera for some nice new digital stuff, and hope to do that a lot more than I've been able to. I love to go off-roading, and my Wrangler Rubicon's calling to me. I have a lot of things I want to go do. Work is not one of them. But that doesn't mean I won't work at those things, because that's my nature. Um, and what I have promised my wife is that she won't find me on the couch all day long, because I think she'd kick me out of the house. Probably that will be the biggest issue is, she has to put up with me those other 200 days a year.
Maybe that's why the marriages work for all these 41 years.
It could be. Well, probably it was a nice break from going to work together every day for 17 years and then coming home and raising kids.
All right. And how far along did you get with the drumming? Is that something that was did you guys have a band at any point or anything like that?
Oh, way back in the day. Yeah. But I actually played trombone and went to college and had a half tuition music scholarship, but I could not possibly play that anymore. Haven't picked it up in years, but playing the drums is my passion. So I guess, to quote the song, I'm going to bang on the drums all day. That'll be a nice way to spend at least some part of my retirement.
Did you have the dream and the goal of being in a rock and roll band and becoming famous that way at any point, or is that just never?
No, actually, I'm much more of a jazz guy than rock. I don't dislike rock. I obviously grew up in that era. But my dad and my mom were musicians. My dad playing trombone a little on the lines of Tommy Dorsey, and I grew up listening to Dad play the horn and sing, and Mom play the piano in our living room. So I was inundated and educated on big bands and swing and jazz and all of that. So that's much more my place. And very few of those people get famous, particularly now. So no, fame and fortune and living the life on the road was no. I running theaters and being a roadie for AV taught me that that's not a good thing to do. So that's never been something I aspired to.
Sounds good. Is there anything else you wanted to mention? I know we've covered a lot here, but is there anything else that you wanted to make sure we talked about?
Just a thank you to all the people that contributed in my career, particularly my team. My team is absolutely brilliant. We have an extraordinarily dispersed workforce in my department. Most of us work out of our homes. We have very little bricks and mortar around the world. So they are a unique band of folks who are highly self-motivated, because you cannot micromanage anyone 10,000 miles away. They are extraordinarily committed and dedicated. Many of them been along on that ride for the majority of that 20 years. So just a special thanks to how much they've contributed and how much all the volunteers have contributed around the world as well. Because as a trade association, we live and die with our volunteers and how much they support us. So that would be my final comment.
Okay, and for those who want to buy you a beer or a slice of cake during InfoComm, when is your actual birthday?
Oh, actually, it's the week after. I was teasing.
Okay.
It's
All right.
you know.
Okay, sounds good. Well, that's all the questions I have. So I think that's about it. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Craig. It's been great. I appreciate the time.
Thanks. All right.